اوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تحياتي للطلبة. هذا اللي حكينا عنه، المحاضرة اللي أريدها. هاي مجرد محاضرة نموذجية للي أريده، يعني مو ضروري تختاروا لي نفس هذا الموضوع. ممكن تستخدم الباوربوينت، ممكن تستخدم الوورد، نفس الشيء، ما تفرق لي، بس المهم تسووها بالطريقة اللي حكينا عنها. هسه هذا هنا أول صفحة، كتبوا لي عنوان المحاضرة اللي راح أو الدرس اللي راح تنطوه، وهنا اسمكم، طبعا إذا دراسات صباحية أو مسائية. بعدين أول شيء نبدي باللسن بلان. تخلوا لي اللسن بلان. اللسن بلان لازم تحتوي على التايتل، objectives, warm up, materials, procedure, repetition, evaluation and homework. Of course, there is an example of the lesson plan. As I told you, there are many mistakes here. This is just an example of one of the students. The last year, I think, that she just wrote it. You just do it in the same way, okay? Just draw a table. You have the lesson, the date, the section, and here is your name, okay? And then here the unit that you're going to teach, the parts of the body. This is the title of the lesson, okay? And here you write the date, and here you write your section. Now, you start with the objectives, okay? What is the objectives? You need to fulfill. Now, remember with the objectives, remember you talk about the 4 skills, okay? Here you need to improve the 4 skills and involve them in your lesson. By skills, remember, I mean reading, writing, listening, and speaking, okay? So, of course, in addition to vocabulary. Now, here you have the warm-up. How you are going to do the warm-up, you just write it here. These are just outlines, don't write any details here. The details, you write it in your PowerPoint slides here, okay? So this is just the outlines, يعني خطوط عريضة. So how you are going to do this. And here, it's important here to tell me something about the materials that you are going to use. So what are the materials that we're going to use, particularly with reference to the procedure that we're going to talk about here. All right, with reference to this part, the part of the vocabulary. You need some kind of materials here. So remember to it's not necessarily here. This is just a sample. So what are the materials that you are going to use? You have to tell me what are the materials, and then you write them here in your plan, okay? So what kind of materials they are going to use. Now you have to say something about the procedure. All right, write the procedure here. I didn't write it this for you. I thought this is easy for you. So I'm just using the plan of another lesson written by, as I told you, by one of your colleague. Okay, so this is the procedure here. And then you go to repetition and evaluation, okay? All right, so repetition and evaluation. Now, generally speaking, you have to mention something like this. All right, title, the objectives, the warm-up, the material, the procedure, repetition, and evaluation. So you have to write you start your report by writing the lesson plan. This is the lesson plan. You write it in this sequence, okay? Now, before I start talking about how to write the procedure of your lesson, I'd like you to remember these notes. I mentioned this yesterday, but just to remind you, it is written here for you. Teachers' participation not more than 20%, and student participation supposed to be 80%. As I told you, this is the communicative approach, and since we are talking about communicative approach, so the main job supposed to be done by the students, not by you. Okay, you have to remember this. I mentioned this more than one time, but I think it is something a little bit difficult because it does not go with the classical method that is used these days in schools. Okay. Secondly, don't read aloud and ask the students to repeat after you. Please don't do this. Okay. I know that many teachers are doing this. All right. So please don't do that. Don't read aloud. With some exceptions, maybe, if we are talking about this part, the part of listening. Okay. Here, maybe you have some exceptions here because we have some part related to listening, so you may do this, but try not to let's say spend a lot of time doing this. Okay, you just spare some time. We're going to talk about this when we arrive to listening part. Now, thirdly, avoid translating words and ask them. Again, I'm going to talk about this in details, but these are just general notes. So please don't translate words and try to ask them to guess the meaning of the word, all right, from the context. If they can't explain them in context or by using pictures, body language, etc. The most important thing here is that you students supposed to guess the meaning of words because this would be more useful for them to remember the words in the long term. Okay. Avoid asking all the students questions and interact with individual groups. So don't ask all the students in the class questions and require one of them to answer the question because this will create a great deal of chaos inside the classroom. Okay, so please remember these notes. I'm going, as I told you, to mention this and discuss these details, these points or notes in details throughout my explanation to the video. Okay. Now, the first thing you should do is to divide the students into groups, as it is mentioned here. I know this is something ideal. I know what's going on in the schools. I know very well. I told you more than one time. I know that this is not something to find in all schools. Maybe you find something like this or that, like this atmosphere in the private schools. Maybe even in some private schools we don't have this. Okay, so I know this very well. This is the ideal, but try to arrive at this ideal classroom as much as you can. Do your best. Okay, this is the way that I'd like to see the classroom. So there is a TV here and there are some tables and students are sitting around just like this. Again, this is ideal. I know this very well. So do your best to create an atmosphere like this because this is the best way that I have in mind concerning having the communicative approach or making the communicative approach more achievable. Okay, so you have to divide the students into groups, giving a name for each group. Of course, these are adults, so here we are talking about teenagers because we are teaching intermediate schools students. So the same idea, and ask them to select representative for each group. All right, this is the first thing you have to do, as I told you. Okay. Now let's start with the lesson. Now again, you need, because you have two types of books. You have the workbook and the activity book. You need to choose some activities from the workbook. Of course, you need to prepare this before you start your lesson. You need to choose some, let's say, topics from the workbook and support them by some activities from the activity book. Of course, this is the warm up. The idea of the warm up is to improve the speaking skills. Remember, this is very important. You need to understand. Of course, you're not going to tell this to the students. This is yours. This is yours. Okay? So you need to understand that the main idea of the warm up here is to improve the speaking skill. Okay? So that's why you need to, let's say, make the other skills not your priority. Your priority is to improve the speaking. That's why the idea of correcting the pronunciation of students supposed to be marginal at this part of the lesson. The idea of asking them to write and to read is something marginal. The main idea here is to improve the speaking skill. That's why if you see here the idea of warm-up, if you just go into details here, you would see that it is designed in order to improve the speaking skills of the students. Okay? So each group should work together, and each student should choose three things. Okay? Choose 3 things. All right. That are good and those that are not good, and explain why to all the members of the students. So the students, one of them will be the representative of the group, okay, and he will ask the other members to choose 3 things, okay, to choose 3 things from these types of food, and ask them to say whether they are healthy or not healthy, whether they're good for their health or not good for their health. Now, as you can see, this is what the students are going to do. So this is not your job. So what you are going to do, you go around, listen, check, correct, communicate, interact, and smile. This is your job here. This is your job, okay? You're not going to say anything. So you are just listen to them, check whether are doing well, correct some mistakes if there are some mistakes, communicate, interact, and smile. You go around her and try to do this. Now, don't spend so much time with one group and neglect the other. Be careful. Try to divide your time watching all the groups by going around and try to see whether everything is going all right. Okay? So listen, check, correct, communicate, interact, and smile. Now, when you finish this is supposed to be to take 10 minutes. Okay. Okay. Here, when I'm mentioning here the times, I don't want you to be very sharp with reference to the times. So it is approximately. So let's say maybe less, maybe more. Okay. 7 to, but not, this is the maximum. This is the maximum. But if you exceed this time, okay, which is 10 minutes, so stop it. Stop this process or this part of process and try to move to another part. So this is supposed to be number 1, okay, the warm up, number 1. This is the part 1 in your lesson, okay? This is part 1 in your lesson, all right? And the time, as I said, 10 minutes. And the main idea here is speaking. To let the students, to let them talk to each other and try to explain which one is, let's say, healthy. Try to choose some of these types of food and which one is healthy. So maybe they don't know the meaning or the vocabulary here. So it's okay to use some Arabic here. All right? It's okay. But try to, let's say, to give them the English words. if you just listen while they are talking, they are using some Arabic words here, you just give them a correct English word, okay? Now, let's go to number two, part two. Part two, as you can see here, is divided into two partitions, reading A and reading B. Why? Because reading A for the reading comprehension, and reading B for the exercise, for the activity. Now, for the comprehension, remember here, I have just selected this from the book, as I told you, from the book, from the intermediate book for the students. All right, you know this. So what you are going to do here, one of each group read, but not very loud. Now we go around here. One of the students will read, but not very loud, in order not to confuse the other members of the groups. So his voice, the level of his voice, has to be heard by the other members in order not to confuse the other members of his own group and not to confuse the other groups. Okay, this is my idea. Okay, so here now the other members should listen. Okay, they have to read this text. All right. Of course, there are some words that might be difficult for them. All right. Remember, this is reading comprehension. When I say reading comprehension, so the idea is not to understand all the words of the text. Here, you are not teaching vocabulary. You are not teaching vocabulary. Vocabulary is here. Remember, this is very important for you to understand what each part of the lesson should serve. The idea here of the lesson is to let them understand the general meaning of the text. By what? By guessing. By guessing. Okay? So it is not important for the students to learn each word, the meaning of each word. But if they'd like to do so and ask you, okay, it's okay. If you have time, you can answer them. Okay? You can answer them, but not translate. Don't give them the meaning in Arabic. Okay? Please, I am saying this more than one time. Okay? Try to help them to, as I said here, how you give them meaning. Ask them to guess the meaning if they can't explain them in context or by using pictures or body language. Don't give them the meaning in Arabic, okay? Because they will forget. Now, the teacher should go around and check if someone needs help. He may explain the meaning of difficult words, keeping in mind this note, okay? Keeping in mind this note. Now, the idea of this part, as I have just said, is not to understand all the words, but to have a general meaning and guess the answers, okay? All right, this is the idea, and this is the main text in the unit, okay, to keep fit. Now, suppose this is supposed to be taken to take 8 to 10 minutes. As I said, this is approximate. So I'm not asking you to be very sharp with time, but maximum 10 minutes. Now, after they finish reading the text, they go into doing the activity here, the answer. All right? After finish reading, students have to answer these questions in groups again. Again, this is not your job. Your job to answer this question. Don't answer these questions, please. This is supposed to be done by students. After reading, they are answering questions, okay? So answer all the questions. If you don't have enough time, leave the... if you don't have enough time here, for instance, there are some students which are very slow, okay? Some students will finish, but others are very slow. So there is no need to, let's say, give them more time. You just have 5 to 7 minutes and that's it. Stop it and give the rest for them as homework. Again, this is your job. Your job is going around, talking and helping all the groups, and be careful not to spend so much time on a specific group. Again, I mentioned this. So don't spend so much time on specific groups. All right. When you finish talking about reading, okay, remember her. I'm talking about warm up, reading, doing the activity, and then you go to the vocabulary. This is the part for the vocabulary. This is supposed to be the most interesting part in your, let's say, in your lesson. This is supposed to be the most interesting part. Now, what is the main idea here? The main idea here is to develop the vocabulary, to let them understand the meaning of these types, different types of food and desserts and drinks. Okay, this is the main idea. All right, and how foods are, let's say, cooked. So either grilled or baked or fired. Okay, so different types of cooking food. So this is the main idea. The main idea here is vocabulary. All right. Again, remember again. Sorry for repeating myself, but because this is very important, and I know that some students are so stubborn that is they don't listen to me. So just doing what they are convinced of. So now this part of the lesson aims to teach the students some new vocabulary. The first thing you should know that translation might help, but it would be much useful. Okay, it would be much useful if too much useful to provide the students with some materials that create. Sorry, because I was in a hurry when I made this. So there are some mistakes. Materials that create context to let the new vocabulary in their long-term memory. What do I mean by this? Now, if you just give them the meaning of some words here, all right, it might be useful for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, and that's it. After they finish, they just forget the meaning of these words. Believe me, believe me. All right. So translation here is not that important. All right. Though the main idea here is vocabulary. It might be useful, as I said here. The translation might be useful to provide, but it would be much better for them to let them try to understand the meaning of these words by guessing, by creating some context. How? What is the context? The context here is that I suggest to create an activity, role play, acting, or waiter clothes with bow tie. Okay, this is just a suggestion. I'm not telling you that you have to follow these directions as I am saying one by one. This depends on you. Just try to think about some. Be creative. Be creative. Try to think about some ideas that the main, as long as you know the objective, the aim is to let them remember the meaning of these words. How? By providing context. Here we have a waiter. Okay, so you just have a white shirt and a bow tie, and one of them will, and believe me, students were going to love this. We're going to love this. Sorry. So a member of the group will act as the waiter with a white shirt and bow tie, holding the menu, as you can see here. He has the menu, all right, giving them the menu, and he have a kind of notebook, and write some notes in the menu, which you have already heard. You have to write in the menu all these. Of course, you have to already prepare this. All right, and then you have already prepared. The students should see all the vocabulary with their pictures, and each member of the group should choose, should have chose, should choose. All right, or should choose something to eat. Okay, should choose something to eat. All right, some dessert and some drink. You should then ask the waiters, because we have one waiter for each group. It's not one waiter for all the groups. So we have one waiter here for going back here. For each group, you have a waiter, and the waiter go around only asking about what do each one of the member of the group like to have for food. Okay. Some does that, and while they are saying the choices, all right, they should raise the pictures as everybody can see them and remember after they finish what they're supposed to do. So each waiter has to raise the pictures and saying the choices because this way is going to be a kind of repetition for the words and a kind of practicing and remembering with pictures. Remember, with pictures. Huh? This will be a good way of remembering the meaning of all these vocabulary. Okay. This is just a suggestion. I'm not saying that you have to do it. All right. Just think about some other ideas, some other suggestions in order to relate them and in order to do the main objective of the part, which is to learn the vocabulary. Now, the last part is listening. Listening, because you are supposed to have some kind of CDs with the books, so please try to use them. Okay, and you should have a loudspeaker just in case there is no one in the classroom. You should have your own loudspeaker. All right, and then you go and put it on this, let's say, part, which is as it's written here, AB22, and then let them listen. So after they finish listening, all right, choose one member of each group to practice the pronunciation. One of them to say. Now, in this part, you are, let's say, because the main idea of this part is listening comprehension to improve their pronunciation, you are allowed to say, to correct for them, but not let them to repeat after you. To correct for them the pronunciation. But here in these parts, if something went wrong with reference to pronunciation, just disregard this, particularly in this part of speaking, because here the idea is to let them to be fluent in speaking. So if there are some kind of mistakes in pronunciation, just disregard them, because the main idea is to let them to speak. And her, whereas her, since the main idea is to let them to improve their pronunciation, here you may correct the pronunciation, you may correct if there are something wrong in the way they are pronouncing specific words. Now, so choose one member of each group to practice the pronunciation, let them, and then they do the exercise, the matching. Okay. Again, about timing, I mentioned this more than one time. After you finish, you give some kind of briefing, summary for all the lesson, and you should end the class by making a brief idea about the major idea they practice, write them at the board. And remember, there is one last note here. Did I mention anything about the board? Your job here as a teacher. Did I mention anything about the board? Where is the board? There is no board. There is no board. Why? Because simply in the idea of the communicative approach, your job here is to go around and check about how they are doing. Now, they all, as you can see here, the main idea, all the activity is done by students. You are just supervising how they are doing, correcting them. This does not mean at all that your job here as a teacher is something marginal, not essential. Of course not. Of course not. You are designing the whole lecture, the whole class here, as you can see. All right? And then supervise, correct, try to connect between different activities inside the classroom. All right? And try to interfere whenever it's important, but not to write on the board and explain every single details. All right? Thank you very much. I think I hope this would be useful, and try to meet you in some other videos. Thank you very much.